The massive station hung in the darkness of space like a jewel made of metal and light. It was older than most civilizations in the galaxy, built by hands that had turned to dust thousands of years ago. This was the Galactic Council Station, where the most powerful species in the universe gathered to make decisions that shaped the fate of billions. Ambassador Jinho Park stood in the waiting chamber, looking through the transparent wall at the stars beyond. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. Behind him, Captain Mina Choi checked her datapad for the 100th time, reading numbers that refused to change no matter how many times she looked at them. The numbers were bad. Very bad. "They will see us in 5 minutes," said the Valasian attendant. A creature that looked like flowing water, held in the shape of a person. Its voice was gentle, almost sad. "I wish you luck, Ambassador Park. You will need it." Jinho nodded. He had prepared his speech for weeks, rehearsing every word until it was perfect. But he knew that words alone might not be enough. Not for what he was about to ask. The doors opened with a sound like distant thunder. The council chamber was enormous. A circular room where 12 seats rose on platforms around a central speaking area. Each seat held a member of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had been making decisions for thousands of years, while humans were still learning to make fire. Jinho walked to the center. His shoes made soft sounds on the polished floor. The lights were bright, making him feel small and exposed. Around him, the council members watched with eyes that were nothing like human eyes. Some had too many eyes. Some had none at all, but sensed him in ways he could not understand. "The human delegation may speak," said High Chancellor Vraxis. He was massive, his body covered in a shell that looked like dark metal. When he moved, his limbs clicked together like weapons being prepared. His voice was cold and hard. Jinho took a breath. "Honored council members, I come before you with urgent news. 3 weeks ago, our long-range sensors detected a massive fleet moving through the Outer Rim territories. This fleet belongs to the Devourers, a parasitic species that consumes everything in its path. They have already destroyed 17 colony worlds." He activated his projector. Images filled the air above him, showing planets that had been green and alive, now reduced to bare rock. Cities that had held millions, now empty and silent. Ships that had tried to flee, torn apart, and scattered across the void. "The Devourer fleet numbers more than 3,000 bioships," Jinho continued. "They are heading directly toward human space. Current projections show they will reach our outer colonies in 6 weeks. Our home world, Earth, in 12 weeks. We have 240 warships. Against 3,000, we cannot win." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then, a sound began. It started low and grew louder. It took Jinho a moment to recognize it. Laughter. Counselor Thel Mora was laughing. She was a being of pure energy, contained in a crystalline form. And when she laughed, it sounded like glass breaking. "The infant species comes crying to the adults," she said. "How predictable. You have been part of the galactic community for only 30 years, said another council member, Drakon, whose species had traveled the stars when Earth's sun was young. "You contribute nothing to our civilization. You have no technology worth noting. Your military is primitive, and now you ask us to risk our fleets for your survival?" Mina's hand tightened on her datapad so hard the screen cracked. Jinho did not look at her. He kept his eyes on the council. "We are asking for temporary aid," Jinho said, keeping his voice level, "and for permission to evacuate civilian populations to neutral zones until the threat passes. We do not ask you to fight our battle alone. We only ask that you stand with us." Vraxis leaned forward. "Human, your species does not even have proper shield harmonics. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles and primitive explosives. You barely understand quantum mechanics. What makes you think you have anything to offer this council in exchange for our protection?" "We offer our courage," Jinho said. "We offer our determination. We offer the promise that if you help us survive, humanity will remember. We will stand with the Council in future threats. We will. Empty promises from a species that will be extinct in 3 months, Thelmora interrupted. The Devourers cannot be stopped by courage or determination. They can only be stopped by advanced technology and superior firepower, which you do not possess. Another council member spoke, a being whose name Jinho could not pronounce, whose form shifted like smoke. The council has protocols. We do not interfere in natural selection. If the Devourers are stronger than humanity, then humanity must adapt or perish. This is the way of the universe. Natural selection? Mina could not stay silent any longer. She stepped forward, her voice shaking with anger. You are talking about the death of 11 billion people. Men, women, children, families, entire civilizations built over centuries. You would let all of that die because of protocols? Captain Choi, Jinho said quietly, but she did not stop. We came here believing the Council existed to protect civilization, Mina said. We believed that advanced species had a responsibility to help those who cannot help themselves. We were wrong. You are not protectors. You are cowards, hiding behind rules. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in languages that hurt to hear. Guards moved toward Mina. But Jinho stepped between them. Enough, Vraxis said, and his voice made everything else silent. The human captain speaks out of fear and ignorance. We forgive this. But the answer is no. The Council will not provide military aid to Earth. The Council will not provide sanctuary to human refugees. If humanity wishes to survive, it must find its own way. We wish to call for a vote, Jinho said, as is our right under Council law. Very well, Vraxis said. All in favor of providing aid to the human species in their conflict with the Devourers, make it known. Silence. Not one council member spoke in favor. All opposed? 11 voices spoke as one. Only the Valasian delegate remained silent, abstaining from the vote. The vote is decided, Vraxis said. Humanity will receive no aid. This audience is concluded. All Rex. Jinho stood very still. He had known this was possible. But he had hoped. He had believed that somewhere, in this vast chamber of ancient wisdom, there would be mercy. He was wrong. He turned to leave, Mina beside him. At the door, he stopped and looked back at the council. When humanity survives this, Jinho said, his voice carrying across the chamber, we will remember who stood with us. The doors closed behind them. In the chamber, the council members returned to their other business, already forgetting the desperate plea of the infant species. They had more important matters to attend to. They did not know that they had just made the biggest mistake in the history of the galaxy. The war room deep beneath the United Nations headquarters was cold and filled with the quiet hum of computers. Screens covered every wall, showing star maps, fleet positions, and calculations that all led to the same conclusion. Earth was going to lose. Admiral Taeho Kim stood at the center of the room, his uniform perfectly pressed despite the fact that he had not slept in 3 days. Around the large table sat the leaders of Earth's military forces, scientists, and government officials. Every face was grim. Let me make this clear, Taeho said, pointing to the main display. The Devourer fleet has 3,042 bioships. Each ship is between 500 and 2,000 meters long. Each ship can consume a city the size of Tokyo in approximately 6 hours. They reproduce by consuming organic matter and converting it into more ships. He pressed a button, and the display changed. Earth's combined military fleet consists of 240 warships. We have 16 dreadnoughts, 42 cruisers, 87 destroyers, and 95 support vessels. In a direct battle, we would be destroyed in less than 4 hours. So we evacuate, said one of the government officials, a woman whose hands shook as she spoke. We load as many people as we can onto ships and run. We abandon Earth and start over somewhere else. Where? Mina asked. She had returned from the council station that morning, still angry from the rejection. The council made it clear. No one will take us. Every system in the galaxy knows the Devourers are coming. No one wants to harbor refugees from a dead species. Then what do we do? Another official asked. Just wait here to die? No, said a new voice. Dr. Una Bake entered the room, carrying a data chip like it was the most precious thing in the universe. She was young for someone so important, barely 30 years old. But her eyes held an intensity that made people listen. We fight, and we use every advantage we have. She inserted the data chip into the main computer. New information flooded the screens. Designs for weapons that looked nothing like the standard kinetic cannons and missile systems Earth's fleet currently used. This is Project Ragnarok, Una said. We began development 8 years ago when we first learned about the quantum destabilization theories. The Galactic Council declared this technology illegal. They said it was too dangerous, too unstable, that it violated natural laws. They forbade any species from researching it. And we built it anyway, Tejo said. It was not a question. We built it anyway, Una confirmed. In hidden facilities in the asteroid belt. On dark moons. In places where Council sensors could not reach. We perfected it. Ragnarok is a quantum weapon that creates cascading reality fractures. It tears apart matter at the subatomic level. Against organic targets like the Devourers, it is devastatingly effective. How devastating? Asked Commander Donghyun Lee, head of Earth's Special Operations Forces. In our tests, a single Ragnarok device completely destroyed a target asteroid 3 kilometers wide in 0.7 seconds, Una said. The destruction spread through the asteroid's structure like a virus, breaking every molecular bond. Nothing remained. Not even dust. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. Why did the Council ban this? Mina asked. Because it scares them, Una said simply. Quantum destabilization does not care about shields or armor or energy barriers. It goes through everything. A species with this weapon could threaten even the oldest Council races. So, they made it illegal, and hoped no one would be desperate enough to build it anyway. How many do we have? Tejo asked. 16 full-scale devices, Una said. 1 for each dreadnought. But, she smiled. And it was not a kind smile. 3 days ago, we achieved a breakthrough. Engineer Hyunwoo Nam managed to miniaturize the technology. We can now produce smaller Ragnarok devices. Much smaller. Small enough to fit on a destroyer. Small enough to fit on a civilian transport ship. Tejo's eyes widened. How many can you produce in 6 weeks? If we convert every factory on Earth and Mars to production? If we strip resources from non-essential systems? If we work every scientist and engineer? Around the clock? Unquote. Una calculated quickly. Approximately 2,000 units. 2,000 weapons, Tejo said slowly. Against 3,000 ships. Better odds than 240 ships, Donghyun said. But we still need a strategy. We cannot fight them head-on, even with these weapons. No, Tejo agreed. We cannot fight them like the Council would fight them. We need to fight them like humans. We use tactics the Devourers have never seen before, because they have only ever fought Council species. And Council species fight with honor and rules, and predictable patterns. He began working on the star map, moving ship positions like pieces on a game board. We divide our fleet into wolf packs. Small groups of ships that strike fast and disappear. We use guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run attacks. We make them afraid. We make them paranoid. We make them waste resources, hunting ghosts. What about the colonies? Someone asked. The Devourers will reach our outer colonies first. We cannot evacuate everyone in time. We do not evacuate everyone, Donghyun said, understanding Tejo's plan. We evacuate some. enough to make it look real. But we leave volunteers behind. Special forces. People willing to stay and fight. We turn the colonies into traps, Colonel Sujihan said. She was Dongyun's best officer, a woman who had survived 3 impossible missions, and smiled while doing it. We rig entire cities with explosives. When the devourers land to consume the planet, we destroy them. We make every world they touch cost them dearly. That is insane, said one of the officials. You are talking about destroying our own cities. They are already lost, Suji said coldly. Better to destroy them ourselves and take the enemy with them than let the devourers consume everything and grow stronger. Taeho nodded. The evacuation ships will not run away. They will go to staging areas. We will arm every civilian transport with Ragnarok devices, every cargo hauler, every passenger liner, every small ship that can fly. We turn our entire civilian fleet into a militia. Thousands of ships, all armed with the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The Council will never allow this, an official said. If they learn we have quantum weapons. The Council left us to die, Mina interrupted. The Council does not get a vote anymore. We do what we must to survive. Yuna pulled up more designs on the screen. We also need to address our tactical disadvantage. The Devourers have a hive mind. They share information instantly across their entire fleet. They adapt quickly to threats. Ragnarok will surprise them once, maybe twice. Then they will adjust their tactics. So we keep surprising them, Taeho said. We do things that make no sense. We break every rule of space combat. We ram them. We teleport at 0 distance. We use weapons that should not work. We make them think humans are insane. They would not be wrong, Dongyun muttered, but he was smiling. Over the next 3 days, Earth transformed. Factories that built cars and computers retooled to build weapons. Scientists who studied medicine and physics were pulled into weapon development. Every person on the planet knew what was coming. Every person knew the odds. But humanity had faced extinction before. In the ancient days, when they were just small tribes fighting against a hostile world, they had survived then. They would survive now. Sang-Hoon Woo was a cargo ship captain, a simple man who had spent 20 years hauling goods between Earth and Mars. He had a wife and 2 children. He had a small apartment with a view of the ocean. He had a life that was quiet and happy. When the call went out for volunteer militia, he did not hesitate. They gave him a Ragnarok device for his ship. They gave him basic tactical training. They told him he would probably die. He signed the papers anyway. Why? His wife asked, tears in her eyes. Why do you have to go? Because someone has to, Sung-Hoon said simply. Because if people like me do not stand up, then who will? Across Earth and all her colonies, millions of others asked the same question. And millions gave the same answer. Someone has to stand up. Someone has to fight. 6 weeks later, the Devourer Armada entered human space. Long-range sensors picked them up at the edge of the system. 3,000 ships, vast and terrible, moving like a swarm of locusts. Earth did not run. Earth did not hide. Earth went completely dark. Every station, every ship, every outpost shut down their communications and waited in silence. The Devourers moved deeper into human territory, expecting to find fear and chaos. Instead, they found silence and darkness. It made them cautious. It made them slow down, and that was exactly what humanity wanted. News traveled fast in the galaxy, even news about species that were about to die. The Devourer invasion of human space became a topic of discussion in 1,000 different worlds. Most saw it as a tragedy, but an inevitable one. The humans were young and weak. Nature would take its course. On the Galactic Council Station, Counselor Thelmora watched the initial reports with cold interest. The Devourers had entered the outer rim of human territory 12 days ago. According to standard calculations, The human military should have been overwhelmed by now. Earth should be sending desperate evacuation signals. Instead, there was only silence. Strange, Thelmora said to her assistant. Why have we received no communications from Earth? Their communications arrays appear to be shut down, the assistant replied. All of them. Every human station, every ship, every colony, has gone dark. Fear, Thelmora decided. They know they cannot win, so they hide like children afraid of the dark. But High Chancellor Vraxis was not so sure. He had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many species face extinction. Fear made them loud, not silent. Fear made them beg and plead and scream for help until the very end. This silence felt different. It felt deliberate. Send surveillance drones, Vraxis ordered. I want to know what is happening in human space. The drones were deployed. Small, automated ships that could observe from a safe distance. They reached the outer edges of human territory and began recording. What they found confused everyone who watched. The Devourer fleet had slowed to a crawl. The massive bioships that normally consumed planets in hours were moving cautiously, scanning every asteroid, every moon, every dark corner of space. They were acting like prey, not predators, and they were dying. The first attack came from nowhere. A squadron of 12 human destroyers appeared from behind a moon, traveling at speeds that should have torn them apart. They fired weapons that made space itself scream and then vanished before the Devourers could respond. 17 bioships died in that first strike, torn apart by quantum fire. The second attack came 3 hours later, from a completely different direction. This time, it was fighters. Small, one-person craft that moved like they were alive. Squadron leader Jisoo Kang led her wing in a pattern that defied logic, weaving through Devourer formations at distances measured in meters, firing at point-blank range before spinning away. The fighter pilots pulled maneuvers that would kill most species. 12 gravity turns that crushed bones. 0-distance warp jumps that risked tearing their ships apart. Combat so close that they could see into the enemy ships as they fired. 63 Devourers died in the second attack. The humans lost 4 fighters. The council watched the recordings in stunned silence. How are they doing this? Drakon asked. Their technology is primitive. Their ships should not be capable of these speeds. Look at the crew, another council member said, enhancing the video feed. Inside the human fighters, they could see Jisoo and her pilots. Their faces were calm despite the forces trying to crush them. Their hands were steady on the controls. They moved like they had been born to this. Their bodies. Yuna's voice came through an intercepted transmission. Human bodies are more resilient than galactic standard. Our pilots can withstand forces that would kill council species. We use this advantage. Admiral Tejo's strategy was becoming clear. He had broken his fleet into hundreds of small wolf packs, each operating independently. The Devourers could never predict where the next attack would come from. Their hive mind, which should have been an advantage, became a weakness. Every attack sent panic through the entire fleet. Every death was felt by every ship. But the most devastating blow came on the 16th day of the invasion. The Devourers, frustrated by the hit-and-run tactics, decided to land on New Busan, one of humanity's colony worlds. Long-range scans showed it had been evacuated. The cities were empty. It would be an easy meal, a chance to replenish their biomass and create more ships. 300 bioships descended to the surface. They landed in the largest cities, extending their feeding tendrils into the buildings, preparing to consume everything. Colonel Suji Han watched from orbit, waiting. Her volunteers had spent weeks preparing this trap, rigging every building with experimental antimatter charges. The charges were linked in a web that covered the entire planet. When one went off, they all would go off. Wait for it, Suji whispered, watching her screens. Wait until they are fully committed. The Devourers began feeding. Their tendrils dug deep into the planet's crust, anchoring themselves. They were vulnerable now, unable to escape quickly. Now, Suji said, the planet exploded. Not literally, but close enough. Every antimatter charge detonated simultaneously, releasing energy equivalent to 1,000 nuclear weapons. The 300 bioships never had a chance. They were vaporized in seconds, along with everything they had been trying to consume. The shock wave was visible from space, a ring of fire that spread across the planet's surface before fading. When it was over, New Busan was a scorched ruin. But 300 Devourer ships were gone. The galaxy watched in shock. The Council, comfortable in their ancient stations, had never seen anything like this. A species destroying their own world just to kill their enemy. It was madness. It was desperate. It was terrifying. They are winning, Vraxis said quietly. The humans are actually winning. Then, Vraxis, the Devourer fleet, which had started at 3,042 ships, was now down to less than 2,000. They had lost over a third of their forces in just 16 days. The hive mind was in chaos, unable to adapt to an enemy that fought without rules or honor or predictability. But it was not just the military that shocked the galaxy. It was the civilian fleet. Sang-Hoon Woo had never been a soldier. His cargo ship, the Morning Star, was designed to haul containers, not fight wars, but now it carried a Ragnarok device and a crew of volunteers who had learned to fight in 3 weeks of training. He led a fleet of 2,000 civilian ships, everything from massive cargo haulers to small pleasure yachts. None of them were warships. All of them were deadly. They struck at the Devourer supply lines, hitting the bioships that carried resources and genetic material. They destroyed communication nodes, isolated Devourer groups from the hive mind, and vanished before the enemy could respond. It was the largest guerrilla campaign in Galactic history, thousands of defenseless transports acting as a coordinated military force. This is Morning Star to all militia ships, Sang-Hoon said over the open channel. We have located a supply convoy at coordinates 773. 15 ships, lightly defended. Who wants to join the party? 300 civilian ships answered the call. They jumped into the system together. A chaotic swarm of different ships, all moving in different directions. The Devourers tried to target them but could not decide which ship to shoot first. The militia fired their Ragnarok devices, and 15 more bioships died. Good work, everyone, Sang-Hoon said. Now, scatter. Meet at the next coordinates in 6 hours. The militia vanished, leaving the Devourers confused and angry. On the council station, Thelmora watched another recording of a militia attack. This should not be possible, she said. Civilian ships do not fight. Traders and cargo captains are not warriors. Human traders and cargo captains are, Vraxis said. We failed to understand what humanity is. We thought they were weak because they were young. We thought they were primitive because their technology was not as advanced as ours. We were wrong. More reports came in. The Devourers had attempted to create a forward base in the asteroid belt, but were ambushed by Commander Donghyun's special forces. The Devourers tried to adapt their tactics to counter the Wolfpack attacks, but Taeho changed his strategy before they could respond. The Devourers attempted to rush toward Earth itself, hoping to end the war quickly, but ran into a defensive grid of mines and automated weapons platforms that Hyunwoo had designed specifically to counter their hive mind coordination. Every plan the Devourers made failed. Every attack cost them more ships. The invasion that should have been over in weeks had stalled completely. For the first time in their species' existence, the Devourers considered retreat. But before they could, humanity struck again. Mina Choi led her carrier group in a daring assault on the Devourer fleet's eastern flank. Her ships jumped in at close range, launched every fighter they had, fired every weapon, and jumped out before the Devourers could organize a response. It was called a charge and scatter tactic. something that violated every council rule of engagement. It worked perfectly. 214 devourers died. The galaxy stopped underestimating humanity. News networks across 1,000 worlds broadcast the battle footage. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew their name. Children on distant planets played games where they pretended to be human fighter pilots. Military academies began studying human tactics, trying to understand how a species so young had developed such effective warfare strategies. On Earth, nobody celebrated. The war was not over. The Devourers still had over 1,700 ships. Humanity had lost 103 warships and millions of people. Every victory came with a cost, but they were still fighting. They were still standing, and the galaxy was watching. The Devourer hive mind made a decision. After 6 weeks of losses, after watching their invasion force cut in half by a species that should have been easy prey, they would commit everything to one final assault. No more caution. No more attempting to adapt to human tactics. They would simply overwhelm Earth with pure numbers and speed. Every remaining bioship, 1,700 vessels of death and hunger, gathered at the edge of human space. They formed a wall of organic matter and killing intent that stretched across the void. This time they would not stop. They would not slow down. They would reach Earth and consume it in a matter of hours. In the war room beneath the United Nations headquarters, alarms screamed. Admiral Tejo watched the screens as the Devourer fleet began moving. All of them. Together. Straight toward Earth. Estimated time until they reach us? Tejo asked. 47 hours at their current speed, an officer replied. Tejo nodded slowly. They had expected this. The guerrilla tactics had worked better than anyone hoped, but they always knew it would eventually come down to a final battle. The Devourers would get desperate. They would throw everything at Earth in one last attempt to win. Send the message to Ambassador Jinho, Tejo said. It is time. Jinho was already prepared. He stood in the communications center, dressed in his formal ambassador uniform. Behind him, the Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful. He activated the transmission, broadcasting on all galactic channels. Every world in the galaxy would receive this message. Every species would hear his words. And most importantly, the Galactic Council would hear. This is Ambassador Jinho Park of Earth, he said, his voice calm and clear. 6 weeks ago, humanity came before the Galactic Council and asked for help. We explained that the Devourers were coming to destroy us. We showed evidence of their power. We pleaded for aid, or at least for sanctuary for our civilians. He paused, letting his words sink in across 1,000 worlds. The Council voted against us. 11 species, the oldest and most powerful in the galaxy, decided that humanity was not worth saving. They called us primitive. They called us weak. They laughed at our fear. They told us to handle our extinction alone. Another pause. On the council station, Vraxis and Thelmora watched the broadcast with growing unease. So we did, Jinho continued. For 6 weeks, humanity has fought the Devourers without any help from the galaxy. We have lost 103 warships and over 2 million people. We have destroyed our own colonies to kill our enemy. We have turned our civilian population into a military force. We have done things that violate council laws and council principles. Because the council abandoned us. His face hardened. His eyes, which had been polite and diplomatic during his plea to the council, now burned with something fierce. The Devourer fleet is coming to Earth. They are desperate and angry because humanity refused to die easily. They are throwing everything at us in one final assault. You called us primitive. You laughed at our plea. Now watch what humans do when you leave us no choice. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, beings of every species stared at their screens in silence. In the war room, Dr. Una Beck activated the Ragnarok protocol. This was the full system, not the individual devices that human ships had been using. This was what they had built in secret over 8 years, what the Council had forbidden, what humanity had perfected while the galaxy ignored them. Every human ship, station, and armed satellite across 50 star systems received the activation code simultaneously. The quantum destabilizers came online, linked together in a network that covered all of human space. The energy readings were impossible. Power levels that should not exist, that violated what galactic science said was possible. On the Council station, alarms began screaming. Sensors that monitored quantum fluctuations across the galaxy suddenly went insane, detecting energy signatures that made no sense. "What is that?" Drakon demanded. "What are the humans doing?" "I do not know," Vraxis said. But his voice was shaken. In 3,000 years of life, he had never seen readings like this. Whatever it is using power equivalent to a collapsing star. The human fleet received its orders. Every ship, from the largest dreadnought to the smallest militia transport, began moving. They did not spread out for guerrilla attacks. They did not hide and wait for ambush opportunities. They formed a single, massive formation and headed straight toward the Devourer Armada. "Admiral," Commander Donghyun said carefully, "are we really doing this? A frontal assault? That goes against everything we have been doing for 6 weeks." "Yes," Taeho said simply. "The Devourers expect us to run. They expect hit-and-run attacks. They expect us to be clever and unpredictable. So we will do the one thing they cannot predict. We will charge straight at them and dare them to stop us." Mina smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I always wanted to try this." The two fleets rushed toward each other at speeds that bent space around them. 1,700 Devourer bioships versus 237 human warships and 2,000 militia vessels. The numbers still favored the Devourers, but numbers did not tell the whole story anymore. Jisoo Kang sat in her fighter cockpit, her hands steady on the controls. Around her, 300 other pilots prepared for the battle. They had been fighting for 6 weeks. They had seen friends die. They had destroyed hundreds of enemy ships. They were exhausted and scared and determined. "All fighters," Jisoo said over the squadron channel. "When we hit them, do not hold back. Empty every weapon. Use every trick. Make them remember that they tried to kill humanity." "Yes, ma'am," the pilots replied as one. The fleets met in the space between Earth and Mars. The Devourers, expecting another guerrilla attack, were caught off guard by the direct assault. They tried to spread out, to use their numbers to surround the human fleet. They never got the chance. Admiral Taeho gave the order. Ragnarok Protocol. Full activation. Fire everything. Every human ship fired their quantum destabilizers at the same moment. The weapons were linked through the network Yuna had built, synchronized to amplify each other. The effect was devastating. Reality fractured. Space itself seemed to tear apart where the quantum beams touched the Devourer ships. The bioships' greatest strength, their organic nature, their interconnected biology, became their greatest weakness. The quantum disruption spread through them like a disease, breaking molecular bonds, tearing apart the very structure of their being. The Devourers screamed. It was not a sound that could be heard in the vacuum of space, but every ship with communications equipment picked it up. A psychic wail of pain and terror that echoed across the void. The hive mind felt every death, every ship torn apart, every piece of itself being destroyed. They tried to retreat. They tried to scatter. But humanity was not done. Mina led her carrier group straight into the heart of the Devourer formation. It was insane. It was suicide. It was exactly what humanity had become good at doing. Her ships jumped in at 0 distance, appearing inside the enemy formation where the Devourers could not coordinate their fire without hitting each other. "Engage at point-blank range," Mina ordered. "Let them see our faces when we kill them." Her battle group fired. Ragnarok devices at close range, quantum fire tearing through bioships like paper. The Devourers tried to fight back, But they were too close, too panicked, too overwhelmed. Mina's ships moved through them like sharks through a school of fish, killing with brutal efficiency. Jisu's fighter wing followed, weaving through the chaos. They targeted the bioships that were trying to coordinate the defense, destroying the ones that the hive mind was using to organize. Every loss made the Devourers more confused, more desperate, more vulnerable. Sang-hoon and the militia fleet hit the flanks. 2,000 civilian ships, each carrying a weapon that could kill anything, fired together. The concentrated quantum fire erased an entire section of the Devourer fleet in seconds. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 1,200 Devourer ships were destroyed. The survivors tried to flee, jumping to faster-than-light speed in random directions, just trying to escape. The hive mind was in pieces, unable to coordinate, screaming in pain and fear. But Mina was not finished. She had spent 6 weeks fighting these monsters. She had watched them destroy human colonies. She had seen good people die trying to stop them. She was not going to let them escape. All ships, she said coldly. Pursuit course. Hunt them down. Every single one. The human fleet split into wolf packs again, chasing the fleeing Devourers across human space. It took another week. But they found every ship. Every bioship that had dared to invade human territory was destroyed. Not one escaped. In the end, humanity had destroyed 3,042 Devourer ships. Not a single Devourer survived. The species that had consumed 17 colony worlds, that had been considered unstoppable, was extinct. The cost to humanity was heavy. 127 warships lost. 2.4 million people dead. 3 colonies completely destroyed. The economic damage would take decades to repair, but humanity had won. Against impossible odds, with no help from anyone, they had defeated an enemy that should have killed them. They had stood up when the galaxy told them to lie down and die. And every species in the galaxy had watched it happen. 3 months after the last Devourer ship was destroyed, Ambassador Jinho Park returned to the Galactic Council station. His ship docked at the same port where he had arrived months earlier, desperate and pleading for help. But Jinho was not the same man who had left this place. His eyes were harder now. His shoulders carried the weight of 2 million dead. The station had not changed. It was still ancient and magnificent, a monument to the power of the species who ruled the galaxy. But it felt different now. Smaller somehow. The Valasian attendant who greeted him was the same one from his first visit. Ambassador Park, it said, its water form shifting with what might have been emotion. High Chancellor Vraxis wishes to express his congratulations on humanity's victory, and to discuss how the Council might assist with rebuilding efforts. How generous, Jinho said without warmth. Tell the Chancellor I will see him in the Council chamber in 1 hour. The attendant hesitated. The Council wishes to meet with you privately first, to discuss. 1 hour, Jinho repeated. In the Council chamber, with every member present and all communications channels open to the public. This meeting will not be private. He walked past the attendant before it could respond. Behind him, Captain Mina Choi and a squad of human marines followed. They were not armed, but they moved with the confidence of soldiers who had fought the worst the galaxy could throw at them and won. 1 hour later, Jinho stood once again in the center of the council chamber. The 12 council members sat on their elevated platforms, looking down at him just as they had before. But the atmosphere was completely different. No one was laughing now. High Chancellor Vraxis began to speak, his voice carefully respectful. Ambassador Park, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to offer our congratulations on humanity's remarkable victory over the Devourers. Your species showed courage and determination that exceeded all expectations. The Council would like to discuss how we might assist Earth in recovering from this conflict. We can offer resources, technology, medical aid. No, Jinho said simply. Vraxis paused, confused. I am sorry? I said no, Jinho repeated. We do not want your resources or your technology or your aid. We did not come here for your help. Then why did you come? Counselor Thelmora asked. Her crystal form was dimmer than before, as if the light inside her had faded. Jinho reached into his coat and pulled out a data chip. He placed it on the podium in front of him and activated it. Information began flowing across every screen in the chamber and broadcasting across every open channel in the galaxy. This is the work of Intelligence Director Heiyun Song, Jinho said. Over the past 3 months, while we were rebuilding our fleet and mourning our dead, Director Heiyun was conducting research. She analyzed council records going back 100 years. She found something interesting. The screens showed file after file of petitions and pleas from various species. Requests for help, for intervention, for protection from threats they could not handle alone. In the last century, Jinho continued, 47 species came before this council, asking for aid. 47 civilizations facing extinction, invasion, or disaster. Do you know how many of those requests the council approved? Silence. 3, Jinho said. 3 out of 47. The other 44 species were told the same thing we were told. That the council does not interfere. That they must handle their own problems. That this is the natural order. Thanks for watching. The natural order, he pointed to the screens. Of those 44 species that were denied aid, 7 are now extinct. Completely gone. Their worlds are empty. Their cultures are destroyed. Billions of people died because the council decided they were not worth helping. Those were complex situations, Draken said defensively. The council cannot involve itself in every local conflict or natural disaster. We have protocols. Protocols, Jinho interrupted, and his voice was cold as ice. Protocols that let civilizations die. Protocols that protect nothing but your own comfort and power. You sit here in your ancient station, making decisions about who deserves to live and who deserves to die, and you call it order. But it is not order, it is cowardice. The council chamber erupted in protests. Council members shouted in their various languages, demanding respect, invoking their authority, threatening consequences for Jinho's insolence. He waited until they were quiet again. Earth will no longer abide by your rules, Jinho said clearly. We are formally announcing the creation of the Terran Coalition, an alliance of any species that wishes to join, dedicated to one principle. When a civilization faces extinction and calls for help, we will answer. He pressed another button. The screens changed to show a list of names, species names. 41 civilizations have already agreed to join the Terran Coalition, Jinho said. Young species mostly. Ones that the council has ignored or dismissed. We are pooling our resources, our technology, our military forces, and we are doing something else. Another screen appeared, showing the designs for Ragnarok weapons. The complete specifications, every detail of how to build and use quantum destabilizers. We are sharing the Ragnarok technology with all coalition members, Jinho said. The weapon the council banned because it scared you. The weapon that saved humanity from extinction. Every coalition species will have access to it, free of charge, no restrictions. The council chamber went silent. This was their worst nightmare. The technology they had tried to suppress was now being freely distributed. Species they considered primitive would have access to weapons that could threaten even the oldest races. You cannot do this, Vraxis said, and for the first time, his voice held fear. Quantum destabilizers in the hands of undeveloped species could destabilize the entire galaxy. There could be wars, chaos. You could doom us all. Could. Jinho agreed. Or it could mean that the next time a young species faces extinction, they will have a fighting chance. The next time the Devourers, or something like them, appears, civilizations will not have to come begging to a council that does not care. They will be able to defend themselves. The council will not allow this, Thelmora said. We will use sanctions. We will cut off trade. We will do what? Mina asked, speaking for the first time. She stepped forward to stand beside Jinho. Invade us? Try it. You saw what we did to the Devourers. You saw us destroy 3,000 ships with a fleet that should not have lasted a day. You think your military is better than theirs? The truth was, no one knew. The Council had not fought a real war in thousands of years. They maintained their power through politics and economics, not military might. The idea of going to war with humanity, with a species that had just proven itself capable of impossible victories, terrified them. Earth is no longer under Council jurisdiction, Jinho said. The Terran Coalition operates outside your laws. Any species that joins us is free from your protocols and your bureaucracy. If they need help, they ask the Coalition, not you. If they face threats, we respond together. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at the Council. You had one job, Jinho said quietly. One purpose. To protect civilizations from threats they could not handle alone. To stand with the weak against the strong. To make sure that when someone asked for help, they would receive it. You failed. You sat in your comfortable seats and let people die because it was easier than acting. His voice hardened. Humanity stood up. When you abandoned us. When you laughed at our fear. When you told us to handle our extinction alone. We stood up and fought. We lost millions of people. We destroyed our own worlds. We did terrible things because we had no choice. And we won. He looked at each council member in turn. The next species that comes before you, desperate and afraid, will not be alone, because humanity is listening now. The Terran Coalition is listening, and we will stand up, not just for ourselves, but for anyone who needs us. The Earth delegation walked out of the council chamber. Behind them, the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, realizing that the order they had maintained for millennia was crumbling. Within 6 months, the Terran Coalition grew to 47 member species. Young civilizations that had been ignored or dismissed by the Council found hope in humanity's example. They brought their own strengths, their own technologies, their own determination to help each other survive. The Council tried to maintain its authority, but its power was broken. Species began ignoring Council sanctions. Trade routes shifted to favor Coalition members. Even some of the older Council races quietly began negotiations with the Terran Coalition, recognizing that the galaxy had changed. On Mars, in the new military academy, built to train the next generation of Earth's defenders, Colonel Suji Han stood before a class of young cadets. They came from Earth and her colonies, from Coalition worlds, from species the Council had once called primitive. You are here, Suji said, because your worlds understand what humanity learned. That when the strong refuse to protect the weak, they are not strong. They are just cowards with better weapons. That when someone asks for help, you answer. That when extinction comes knocking, you stand up and fight. She looked at the young faces watching her, human and alien alike, all determined to be better than the generation that came before. The galaxy is not fair, Suji continued. The universe does not care if you live or die. But we care. The Terran Coalition cares. When you graduate from this academy, you will go out into the stars with one mission: to make sure that no one ever has to face extinction alone. To make sure that when someone needs help, they will receive it. She smiled, remembering the battle, remembering the victory, remembering the cost. Humanity stood up when the galaxy told us to die, Suji said. Now, we teach others to stand up too. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who needs them. That is the legacy of what we did. That is why 2 million people died. So that no one else would have to. Have to. The cadets stood and saluted. Humans, Valasians, and a dozen other species, all united in a simple idea: that someone has to stand up, and that someone can be them. The Galactic Council continued to exist, but its golden age was over. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, and nothing would ever be the same again. On Earth, in a small apartment overlooking the ocean, Sang-Hoon Woo sat with his wife and children. His cargo ship had survived the war. He had survived the war. He was one of the lucky ones. "Papa," his daughter asked, "why did you go fight? You are just a cargo captain." Sang-Hoon smiled and pulled her close. "Because someone had to," he said simply. "Because if people like me do not stand up, then who will?" It was the same answer he had given months ago, before the war. But now it meant something more. Now it was the answer that defined humanity and the coalition they had built. Someone has to stand up. Someone has to fight. Someone has to care. And humanity, against all expectations, against the mockery of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had proven that sometimes someone is enough.